Homelessness Prevention Committee to order. We do have a quorum present. So members, today we are hearing just one bill and we will be sending it to HHS. And I would respectfully ask members to be intentional and concise with their comments because we do need to adjourn by 1:30 ideally. So we'll see how that goes. So the next and first and only item on our agenda is Senator Port's bill, Senate File 4704. Senator Port, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A1 authors amendment.
Senator Port moves the A1 authors amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. The amendment is adopted. Senator Port, to your bill as amended.
Thank you. Members, I'm really delighted to be here to talk with you about this bill today. Over the interim, one of the things that we passed last year was a task force to study and have a conversation about what we could be doing through legislation and also through the agencies that work on emergency rental assistance to expedite the process of folks who are having a crisis that requires emergency rental assistance to get that to them more quickly. We met many times from August through February and had incredible conversations with just really engaged experts from all different areas that provide service, as well as folks with lived experience. And through that, we narrowed down what was some really broad ideas, some really specific ideas into sort of 14 recommendations. And what I'm bringing to you today in the DE is a portion of those that we felt were sort of potentially able to be moved fairly quickly and have an impact without having a huge cost associated with them. So I would like to read the workgroup vision and narrative statement, and then I'll just very briefly go through all of the recommendations we had. There were 14 in total, and then we can go to testifiers, including Ellen Solly, who was on the workgroup with me, and happy to answer questions. The workgroup vision and narrative statement was written by workgroup members to describe the foundation on which recommendations were developed. Every Minnesotan deserves a safe and stable home, yet every year tens of thousands of Minnesotans face a housing crisis that threatens their security. Emergency rental assistance can prevent a family from being evicted, helping them stabilize and eventually thrive. Dedicated state and local workers administer a variety of emergency rental assistance programs that provide vital support to Minnesotans. Still, many Minnesotans facing housing crises have told policymakers that they have not been able to access timely financial support. The Minnesota legislature charged the workgroup on expediting rental assistance with identifying processes, procedures, and technological or personnel resources that would enable state and county agencies to deliver emergency rental assistance more quickly. This group, formed of experts from across the state, has worked diligently to produce recommendations that will have tangible impact on delivering timelier and more effective rental assistance to Minnesotans. We developed broad principles to guide our work. First and foremost, we believe that all Minnesotans deserve stable housing. We believe that when housing stability is challenged by a crisis, people-centered systems can provide easy-to-navigate support and timely assistance that prevents severe disruptions such as eviction or homelessness for those Minnesotans. We also acknowledge that rental assistance does not exist in a vacuum. These programs exist as a part of a larger ecosystem of institutions, laws, policies, and practices. The workgroup gathered perspectives from Minnesotans to learn more about the experience of applying for emergency rental assistance. Additionally, the workgroup benefited from presentations and information developed through visioning and co-design work by Family Housing Fund and Research in Action, as described in the external consultation section of this report. These complementary stakeholder engagements confirm the workgroup's recommendations are well-grounded and have a broad base of support. We recognize that insufficient funding for the programs and systems that administer emergency rental assistance contribute to a scarcity mindset that limits access to resources and challenges the efficacies of delivering assistance. Minnesotans face barriers to emergency assistance for a variety of reasons. Multiple programs are administered by multiple entities with different eligibility rules and requirements. Lack of funding contributes to the pressure on administrators to establish criteria to target those limited resources. This can be a challenging process for anyone to navigate, let alone someone facing a housing crisis. In addition, technology barriers, language barriers, and documentation requirements can all inhibit timely submission and processing of applications. After identifying these barriers, our work group set out to explore solutions that aligned with our values as a people-centered rental assistance ecosystem that could provide timely emergency rental assistance to Minnesotans in need. We developed a series of recommendations, some which require changes in state law, and others that can be implemented through administrative changes. We believe the recommendations will greatly improve our collective ability to deliver emergency rental assistance on a timelier basis. Our recommendations include ways to reduce barriers and improve access for Minnesotans applying for emergency rental assistance. Improve access through simplifying language and verification processes, proactively engaging rental assistance, property owners and local administrators, and expanding what languages are available. It will help to pursue technology improvements to enhance the experience for applications and integrate emergency rental assistance programs and resources. It will develop an annual assessment of need to align funding to meet actual needs of Minnesotans who are experiencing housing crisis, and it will enhance data collection and develop criteria to measure the timeliness of processes and payments. For this work group, we were given a very specific target, which was to identify which processes, procedures, and technological or personnel resources would be necessary to enable the state, county, or nonprofit agencies responsible for administering government emergency rental assistance funds to meet the following goals, which are within 2 weeks of receiving a completed application for rental assistance to make and issue a determination, and within 30 days of receiving that completed rental application for rental assistance to issue payment on the approved applications. And the 3 programs that this affects are Family Homeless Prevention Assistance Program, FHPAP, Emergency Assistance, EA, and Emergency General Assistance, EGA. As we worked through our ideas and processes, they came down to 2 main areas. One is the expediting rental assistance, and in there, our recommendations were 1, to increase funding to match the real-time assessment of needs, 2, to simplify language and improve timeframe flexibility, 3, to simplify verification processes to remove barriers for applicants, 4, to increase or start state funding for staff, 5, to minimize use of uniform electronic signature, maximize use of uniform electronic signature options, 6, to modify the MAXIS system, 7, to centralize integrated technology systems, 8, to develop criteria and measure conditions and timeliness of processing applications, and 9, a review of all related statutes and how they interact in this way. The second area was the access to rental assistance, and our recommendations here were 1, to provide access in multiple languages not currently available, 2, to proactively engage rental property owners and critical partners in housing stability, and 3, to expand outreach and consolidate a list of all programs' eligibility criteria for early interviews. Those are just the top line recommendations. You all have a copy of the full report, which goes into detail of those. And for the DE in front of us today, we just have Article 1 of the DE is relevant to our committee because it is what MHFA covers. And so those are to do an annual projection of emergency rental assistant needs. Number 2, to data collect on the timeliness of rental assistance. Section 3 is the e-signature options for rental assistance. And Section 4 is verification procedures for rental assistance. Those are the portions that we believe we can move this year, that the agencies have the ability to move forward with, and that we hope we will have the funding to move forward. Madam Chair, we can go to testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Port. We will move to testimony. Our first testifier via Zoom will be Victor Obiskin. After that, in the room will be Jean Lee. Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and proceed.
Can I go first? Or
Yes,
can you hear me?
please, we can hear
Okay.
you. Please proceed.
Okay, all right. Hello, my name is Victor Obasakin, and I'm the Director and Liaison for Wellness in the Woods, a nonprofit. And then here we go. So I fully support SF 4704 and the companion HF 4556. I am an immigrant who has lived in Minnesota for over 20 years. We all know of the disparities in the systems in place against those who need help in getting affordable housing or the barriers to getting assistance. I feel this bill will help those who are desperately in need. Unfortunately, in greater Minnesota, where I lived, the challenges are far greater. I once was homeless not because I wanted to be, but because of a doctor whom I trusted to perform a surgery had no idea how to perform it. And before I knew it, I was out of funds trying to fix a mistake. And little did I know that the hospital protected her, and there I was, out of money, thrown out of my house. The landlord says, if I can't pay, then I can't stay here. When I went to ask my county for help, I had little to no help. And when I got some help, I was given the wrong information. Time ran out, family kicked out. I had no time to even challenge the mistake the county had made. Ultimately, I and my family had to pay the price. So there are many people out there like me, and this is why expediting rental assistance programs will be key in helping many people. This is a great bill, and I could have used it during my own time of need. So Madam Chair, committee, let us take care of our people. Let's make this happen. Let's get SF 4704 done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I neglected to mention at the beginning of testimony, request to testifiers to please keep your testimony concise to 2 minutes to keep us on track with our schedule. Next, we will hear from Jean Lee, and after that, Renee Rock. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Madam Chair, members, thank you. I'm Jean Lee, head of Children's Hope International, which does legal advocacy and public policy. Our family centers are our shelters, transitional permanent housing and services, and a number of other organizations. I'm also a member of MICA, and they have approved some of the legislation that we were trying to get through. I want to speak to an issue as far as we support Senator Port's bill. However, we think that there are certain areas where we could add value to it. And members now have information as far as what looks like an amendment that we were hoping that it would be included. Basically, what we're trying to do is, as a population, besides just renters, you're also considering the needs of homeowners and what we call the missing middle, which they're not quite renters and they're not homeowners either, but they're in the system as far as still being affected by these different processes. We especially want to elevate the populations as far as seniors, persons with disabilities, because if they are ever homeless, it means an earlier death for them. We also wanted to elevate veterans, those who have been in the military service, and the first responders and the families they live with who are caretakers. As you know, Burnsville has suffered, where their first responders and their family was in crisis. And we feel that everything should be done and there are a number who aren't in the media, everything should be done that's possible as far as helping these first responders, because they are out there sacrificing their lives and trying to help us. So this is why we're saying that their applications need to be elevated and expedited. Also, there's a need for assistance in more areas than was explained in the bill. And I think as you go through the process and the different committees, like DHS and so forth, understand their different areas as they relate to housing. Whatever help we can give these people, we need to, because it's a matter of saving lives. Also, I want to call attention to...
Ms. Lee, can you conclude your thoughts for us? Thank you.
Okay, so basically, what we're saying is, it does mean the lives, not only their lives and their family lives, but it has an impact on our lives, because if we're out there caring for them, they can better perform their duty in caring for us. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Renee Rock, and after that, Ellen Sally. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Chair Port and members of the committee, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak directly to you on SF 4704. My name is Renee Rock. I'm an enrolled member of the White Earth Nation, a single adult household falling within the 200% FPG income bracket. I'm currently living in a Ramsey County public housing unit after years of homelessness, and I am grateful to have and maintain my housing stability. Advocating for housing stability is an arena in which I utilize my homeless lived experience. I serve as a lived experience member of the Stable Housing is a Priority Collaborative, also known as SHIP, a group that advocates for a prevention response system and ending homelessness across the state. It is important to state the need for a coordinated platform for the Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program, emergency assistance, and emergency general assistance programs. One that will simplify the application process for both applicants and staff through the development of a universal, accessible online application. In my experience as a person using these programs, streamlining information gathering across those programs and minimizing redundant paperwork will significantly reduce the stress of applicants like myself and staff. Additionally, clearly communicating eligibility criteria and detailed information on required documentation will help manage expectations, reduce confusion, and alleviate anxiety. SHIP recommends implementing a trauma-informed approach in all communications and interactions with program users, and embedding cultural competency into how it addresses diverse backgrounds. Therefore, staff training and language assistance services will need to be prioritized to eliminate language barriers and ensure accessibility to all. SHIP Collaborative finds the work of the WIRA Workgroup to be commendable and would love to collaborate in every way possible and is open for conversations when needed. We have submitted a letter to this committee as well. On behalf of the SHIP Collaborative, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And our last testifier will be Ellen Sally. When you are ready, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and Senators. I'm Ellen Sally. I'm president of the Family Housing Fund. The Family Housing Fund works collaboratively with stakeholders to address the barriers to help Minnesotans achieve housing stability. And we have years of experience working with the emergency financial assistance system. And I'm here today to speak in support of Senate File 4704. During the pandemic, we worked to distribute more than $38 million of federal emergency rental assistance. Prior to the pandemic, we worked with the court systems to align services and supports to help families facing eviction. And drawing on those experiences, last year we pulled together stakeholders to join a process to reimagine the programs of EA, EGA, and FHPAP. These are the three programs that Senator Port referred to that make up our safety net. At the end of our robust community engagement process, we issued 2 reports that speak to the experiences of emergency financial assistance administrators and renters, and we outlined some recommendations for a reimagined system. And because of our work, I have a deep understanding of the complicated programs that families in crisis are forced to navigate, and a deep appreciation for the program administrators who balance the needs of many with limited resources. And I know at the current funding levels and intense demand, our emergency financial assistance system functions not as a safety net, but as a lottery. The full report of the work group provides a roadmap for how we can build a system that ensures Minnesotans in financial crisis have a transparent and easy path to navigate for help, and one that responds to the speed of the crisis, and that is funded at the level that it ensures it catches all who need it. And this requires funding support for administrative staff to process applications in a timely manner. It requires investment in technology to help simplify the process, and it requires collaboration amongst the different state agencies and stakeholders. And this bill is a foundation for that reimagined system. So I'm in strong support of the vision that the work group laid out. I was grateful to participate in that process, and thank you for hearing my testimony today.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Port, any comments before we move to member discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just want to highlight that this is such a complicated process. It is different counties, multiple agencies, HRAs, nonprofits, all running versions or specific areas of these programs that have different forms. They have technology that does not communicate with each other. It has been sort of pieced together over the years as the need has grown throughout our state, and it simply isn't meeting the needs anymore. But to reimagine this, as Ellen said, is going to take time, it's going to take commitment, and it's going to take investment. And this is really the first step of that, but very much this will be a priority next year and moving on, because this is work that really needs to be done so that these programs can actually function in a way that does meet families where they are when they have those crisis moments.
All right, amendments, questions, discussion, members. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Senator Port, for working on this. I know it's a big project. It's something we've talked about for years. Trying to really get a handle on the different tools that we have in this space. And, you know, most people don't understand how difficult it is up here to wrap your head around all these different agencies, local, federal, state, that play a role. And I want to thank all the citizens that help in that space. Most of them have a heart of gold, so I appreciate it. I have two amendments I'd like to offer members, the A3 and the A4. And if we could do the A3 first, Chair.
Senator Draheim moves the A3 amendment. Senator Draheim.
Senator Port, I think you had a chance to review this. It's just kind of communication between the agencies and both bodies. When they get the e-signature option up and running, it'd be nice to know so we can keep an eye on that change. That's it. Pretty straightforward.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Chair Bolden. Thank you, Senator Draheim. I completely agree. I think one of the ways that we start to bridge the gap between the programs and what we can do as a legislature is to have the information we need. I accept this as a friendly amendment.
Other questions or discussion to the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the A3 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, and the A3 is adopted. Would you like to move to the A4, Senator Draheim?
Thank you. Mind reader. Appreciate that. Members, the other amendment we have in front of us is the A4. And the first thing I think is a typo on line 2.14. In that section, they're just talking about one agency, so it'd be one commissioner, I believe. And then the next one is more reporting, which anybody that's ever been in a committee with me, I like feedback back to us so we can make those tough decisions on what programs to put money in or what level of funding. Pretty straightforward. I encourage A green vote or yes vote?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Draheim. This reminds me to thank Ms. Painter, who did the very hard work of taking our recommendations and turning them into bill form, and then also taking that bill and splitting it apart into the two relevant agencies, which was not easy work. So thank you, Ms. Painter, for that work. I accept this as a friendly amendment as well.
Other questions or discussion to the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the A4 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes and the A4 is adopted. Other discussion, Senator Draheim.
I have just a couple questions, Chair, if I could. In the bill language, you use emergency general assistance. And are those funds limited to just rental assistance?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Draheim. That's a specific program, emergency general assistance. I will have Ms. Sally come up if you have specific questions about it, because that's on the sort of human services side of it. But yes.
Ms. Sally.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Draheim, the Emergency General Assistance Program is operated at a county level in most cases, and counties have some discretion on how they use those funds and the program requirements that they have for individuals. So it's not expressly prohibited for rental, but there's a lot of variation between the counties in how the program is used.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. Do you know how much it's used for other things other than, do we have any mechanism to look at, or do we have a list of what other things they are acceptable to use that for?
Ms. Sally.
Madam Chairman, Senator Draheim, I don't have that information off the top of my head. It is actually one of the challenges with running the program that people don't know how to navigate and what the program allows for. So I think that's part of the vision of the work group, is to clean up and clarify some of those program requirements so it is easier to understand for users of the system.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. And thank you for that explanation. I know we push a lot onto our counties and expect them to read our minds on what we mean. So I appreciate that. And then the last thing I have on line 2.1, it refers to applications for family homeless prevention and program assistance. Now, are these two separate programs?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Draheim. I think that's a typo. I think it should be switched around. Family homelessness prevention and assistance program.
So-
And so if I could offer an oral amendment to insert assistance before program and strike this assistance that is already there. And since we're doing that, on page 1.5, I think it's supposed to be projection instead of protection.
Ms. Painter, could
And
you?
actually,
Sorry.
it also, family homelessness prevention. Oh, no, that one's right.
Oh, thank you, sorry. Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Two items. Ms. Painter, could you state the oral amendment for us, please?
Page 1, line 5, delete protection and insert projection. Page 2, line 1, after and, insert assistance and delete the second assistance.
Any questions on that amendment, members? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, and the oral amendment is adopted. Other questions and discussion, members? Senator Pop.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. First, I found the testimonies really good, and so and some questions pop up from the testimonies. One thing that was brought up was, are we giving any priority considerations for persons with disabilities, veterans, or seniors or military personnel as groups or targeted groups within these programs? And should that be something that we should look at considering or that have been thought about within the work group?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Pa. It is something we talked about. It is also something that some counties and nonprofits do already. They have, right now, because of the scarcity of resources that exists, counties and nonprofits and HRAs sort of have to figure out their own criteria to use the little money that they get to help folks. And so for some of those, they choose to make sure that folks with disabilities, folks who are veterans, or folks who are most at risk of becoming homeless are the ones who receive that first. I think this is absolutely a part of the conversation that we should have as we start to, I hope, shift out of that scarcity mindset and into a mindset of prioritization rather than, well, we can save a few people, so who do we want that to be? I really think we're envisioning a program that looks at the whole need and then says, what do we need to do to be able to reach this group who maybe isn't connected to us for some reason? Maybe there are folks who speak a different language or folks who don't have access because of a disability, that we need to find a different way to reach out to them. I think it should be a critical part of the conversation going forward.
Thank you for
Senator
that.
Pop.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And I agree that it should be part of the conversations going forward. As we know, people with disabilities oftentimes are veterans who deal with I'm going to say it wrong, PTSD. Our seniors are some of the most vulnerable people in our communities, and they should absolutely have some special considerations because of the situations that they're in. So thank you for that. The other thing that was brought up was homeowners. I know we often have, for homeowners or renters, we have medical assistance, utility assistance, food assistance that are pretty equal to whomever needs it can apply. But oftentimes homeowners do not fall into the assistance we have for rental assistance. And they struggle with the same things that may be because they can't pay for their mortgage, all of a sudden now their credit's affected. And that spirals into so many other things, as we know. Their ability to get a refinance, their ability to buy another home that's of lesser cost. You know, it becomes, they have the same struggles as renters do. Are we considering homeowners as part of this conversation, or what do we also have for homeowners that are separate from rental assistance? Or maybe is that already included in there in a different provision?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Pa. It's a really good question. We did not consider it in this work group or in this report because we had a very narrow task given to us by the legislature to specifically look at these 3 emergency rental programs. But through my work with, the committee and the agency, there are programs that do that, and we do invest money in them. I don't think nearly enough, but we do. They are programs that MHFA runs to help both with that crisis point, but also with education and classes. And in those, we have expanded language services over the last few years because that was the thing that was very much missing from that. But I think also continuing to invest in the community groups that are most closely connected to folks in their community and provide those assistance, I think still tends to be a really good way to get connected to folks who might need that assistance. But I agree, it's absolutely something we should continue to prioritize.
Thank you.
Senator Pa.
Thank you, Chair. And then one last question. So this one, I was looking over, let's see here, make sure I have the right one. Page 4, line item 4.25, where it says allowing self-attestation of emergencies assets, and income. So I just want to clarify that. I agree that this would truly help with being able to get assistance in a timely manner. But I'm just going to clarify, does that mean that the only things that they can self-attest to is their assets and their income? And, or does that add that to current other things that they can self-attest to? Just wondering how comprehensive that particular item actually covers.
Ms. Sally?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Fa, currently, this language is to create the support for only those three things that are listed, the state of the emergency, the assets, and income as a specific thing. As a general rule, there's very little opportunity to do self-attestation in the current system. And as you can imagine, providing documentation and showing and demonstrating your need is sometimes a significant hurdle when you're in the middle of a crisis. And so during the COVID relief programs, there was a lot of flexibility in those programs that allowed individuals to attest to their need, their income, and sign affidavits that showed that, and it in fact increased the speed in which assistance was provided. And I think our work group and in the Family Housing Fund's work, we saw that as a key element to increasing the speed to match the speed of the emergency. The emergency moves really quickly. Sometimes the paperwork doesn't, and this allows, from the committee's perspective, an opportunity to have those timeframes align better.
Senator Pa.
Thank you. And I'm not opposed to this by any means, okay? This is great, but I do have a follow-up question. Then does that mean that when people are attesting this, to this, and maybe that may be, I don't know, a letter of, from them stating that this is true and whatever, but let's say is there a process later on that if there's something that was found that information is incorrect, that then there's a follow-up to that? This is just for thought. I'm not saying that people, I believe that most people are truthful in their attestments of their income and assets. This is just a consideration that if something was found later that it was untrue, what is the process after that?
Ms. Sally?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Fa, one of the other components of the recommendation is to look at a more integrated data management system. It's referenced specifically in Maxis. We know that documentation exists in other places too. Mm-hmm. So if we can align systems so that people don't have to provide additional information, that is also a tool that could be used to minimize potential risk in that. So while this specific recommendation doesn't have the language that you just asked about, our goal is also to create a better, more user-friendly experience where people can apply, and all that background information that the state or county collects for other programs is available to shore up that application without having the applicant have to submit it again.
Okay,
Senator
thank you.
Pa.
Thank you, Chair. That's it for me.
Other questions or discussion? Seeing none, closing comments, Senator Ports?
I think I'm really excited that we are taking this one step forward, but this is the first time you will see me in front of you talking about this work group and recommendations, and there will be many more over the coming years. And with that, Madam Chair, I would move that 4704 as amended be recommended to pass and referred to Health and Human Services.
Yes, that is the motion. Members all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, and the bill, it's on its way to Health and Human Services. So members, we will not be meeting next week. Oh, Senator Draheim.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear, Chair, that we're not meeting next week. But my question has to do with the bill up in judiciary, the landlord-tenant law stuff, I'll call it. Is that coming back to our committee?
Chairport.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Draheim. I believe that their plan is to send it to the floor. But I am still not 100% sure what they have decided to do with that bill.
Senator Strahan.
Thank you. I think it's important that we hear it and bring it back here at some point before it's passed. We have time. So after Easter, bring it back.
Noted. All right, members, so as I mentioned, we won't meet next week. We will be in touch about hearing dates regarding a supplemental budget bill once we have more information about targets and budget. And that is it. Reaching the end of our agenda. This meeting is adjourned.